Hello, I'm Roy Richardson, and this is the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. Welcome back to another edition of the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Roy Richardson, joined by my insightful co-host, Sean Murphy. Today,
what's up?
Always great to have you here, my brother. Today, we're diving into the world where science meets heart. Our guest is Jeff Pohlig, co-owner and CEO of Charter Research, the clinical research organization running trials across Orlando, the Villages, and Chicago, and therapeutic areas from Alzheimer's and Parkinson's to liver disease and mental health. Jeff's path runs deep. Rollins undergrad and MBA, leadership stints that honed his operator's toolkit, and a personal connection to Alzheimer's that keeps the work human. He's helped scale a multi-site operation that sponsors trust and communities can feel good about, while reminding us that a trial isn't just about data, it's also care, insight, and hope for families. And he brings a champion's mindset, literally. He's a two-time national water ski champion, so you know grit and recovery are part of the story. Before we jump in, today's episode is brought to you by Aurora Infotech, protecting growing organizations with cybersecurity that scales as fast as you do. Jeff, we're excited you're here.
Happy to be here, guys. Thank you.
Well, welcome again, Jeff. Can't wait to talk about the mission behind Charter, the lessons from leading through COVID, and how you're building a culture that serves patients and sponsors with excellence. And I've known you for a while, and I'm looking forward to it. So let's get into it. And let's kick off with a little something fun before we get into the science and the scale. On the weekends, what looks like peak Jeff these days, and how often is water skiing still included in the process?
Yeah, I love to water ski, so I try to get out there as much as I can. Usually on weekends is our best time. You know, I love just spending time with my family and being outdoors. So that's kind of like my peak of like things I love to do. So snow skiing, water skiing, hiking, like I love those types of things. We've been really into wake surfing in the last few years. So spent some time doing that. And my daughter's big time into gymnastics. So I spend a lot of time at the gym and at her gymnastics meets over the weekends as well. So when I'm not at the office, I try to be active outdoors. I don't get enough of it, but try to squeeze it in.
Got it. And what does non-work skill from competitive water skiing that actually helps you as a CEO, man? And is it balance, focus, recovery after a fall? Give us a little bit of that.
I think there's so much you can learn from competitive athletics, any sport. And you know, mine has been water skiing in my past. You know, I've been involved in competitive water skiing, but sports in general, I mean, it teaches so many life lessons, how to win graciously, how to lose graciously, how to manage emotions and sort of focus on your task at hand. So it's a skill I've learned from it that, you know, I can apply to business, I guess, is really honing in on specifics. And I'll give you an example. So in water ski jumping, I've always enjoyed water ski jumping. Your balance position on your skis is to be on your toes. Like your weight is on the ball of your foot. You don't want to get too far back and slip out the back. And of course, you don't want to go too far forward either. So that's the weight position. So coaches are always, you know, telling their skiers, like keep the weight on your toes, keep the weight on the ball of your foot in your binding. And so that's the general lesson. But like, how do you quantify that? Like, what does that really mean? Like, how far is too far? How much of your weight is there versus your heel? And so I'd heard this advice like my whole career skiing and like trying to be in that spot. And then I had an opportunity to ski with the world's top water ski jumper, Freddie Krueger, and he taught me this lesson. He had quantified everything down to like a very specific. And he doesn't say keep your weight on the ball of your foot. He says when you're positioned correctly on your skis, the water is going to be breaking 6 inches in front of your right binding on the inside edge of your right ski. And that's the measurement. Like he had figured out like the measurement for where the water breaks on the ski as you're turning, right?
That is amazing.
And for me, I was like, that's amazing. Like it was like all of a sudden there was an objective way to measure it. And I could do it. And I could even look down and see where the water was breaking. And you don't have to look down because you develop a feel for it. And you could just think, that's where I want to be. And then you are. But he had taken the time to really think it through clearly and put it into something that's really meaningful and specific. And so I guess the lesson from that can be applied to business is clear specifications are going to enable great, consistent performance. And it was one of those tips, sometimes you get these things in athletics or in any area where it's a new sort of aha moment. And that was one for me that really took my water ski jumping to the next level.
So speaking about water ski jumping, let's go through some quick lightning here. What's your favorite lake?
My favorite lake? Well, I live on Lake Wenata in Winter Park, so that's my home lake. So that's one of my favorites. I like Okehely Park in West Palm Beach. They host a lot of great championship water skiing there. Here more locally, out in Groveland, Okahumpka area, Jack Traverse is like, I love that lake. Great competition lakes. I grew up skiing at Lake Laura in Minnesota. A meaningful lake spot for my family is Lake Palmer Lake in Minnesota. So I like any lake that's wet.
Where are those lakes in Minnesota? Central, southern? What part of Minnesota?
I'm from sort of central/northern Minnesota in Alexandria, but the lakes are all over. I mean, they're carved, long ago by glaciers, and there's lakes all over the state of Minnesota.
Well, let's rewind it back a little bit to how Jeff got to this point.
Yeah, you've been in clinical trials for about 16 years now. What pulled you into this world in the first place? And at what point did it shift from being a job to something that really felt like a calling?
Well, interestingly, I guess I got connected through water skiing. Some good friends that I have water skied with for a long time introduced me to a couple of guys that were running clinical trials. And I didn't know anything about it. I had been involved in another industry prior. I was in automotive collision repair systems, and I was water skiing. And we sold that business. I was looking for my next step, and I was introduced to two men that were running a local clinical trial center. And we really hit it off interpersonally. They had a small research center and really knew how to run the research, like the operations, but it was growing in terms of the number of people and the size of the revenues and the business. And they really weren't experienced and didn't enjoy the business management side of things. So we had complementary skill sets. I handled more of the business administration. They focused on the clinical trial execution. We both learned a lot from each other, had fun doing it, and built a great company. So I got into it just kind of as things happen in life by luck and by connections of people, mutual friends. For me, it shifted into a calling like immediately. I love everything about clinical trials. It wasn't for me something that was like a gradual, and I think that's common in our industry. You get into it and you either love it or you hate it. For me, I love it. I like the mission of what we do, of really, helping. We're doing something good in the world, discovering new medications that can really benefit a lot of people. So I love the mission, and I love the challenge of it, just the day-to-day organizational work of pulling together the teams and the patients and the study opportunities and all the details that have to be coordinated to make it successful. So, for me, pretty much like right out of the gate when I started 16 years ago, I fell in love with it.
Wow. So you got in on the business side, and I guess that's where that Rollins, education comes in, right? You did your undergrad and MBA at Rollins. Were there any professors, classes, or projects from those years that ended up shaping how you lead or scale an operation like Charter?
Yeah, absolutely. I did my undergraduate degree there in economics, and then I went to the Crummer Graduate School and did a master's in business degree there. So many people I met, so many classes I took, and opportunities I had there that have been significant for me. I had a meaningful mentorship opportunity there. I was partnered as a student with Harvey Massey, the late Harvey Massey, who who founded Massey Services Pest Control, and had an opportunity to sit and learn from him. Great entrepreneur, great business leader, really dynamic man. And that was a great honor and privilege to do that. And I had professors at Rollins that really made an impact on me and that I took lessons from that I use to this day. There was a professor in our master's program that taught brand management. And I was in part of a small group. We were working on a project that we were really struggling with. And I brought it to him. I said, look, here's what we're trying to do, but I don't know how to do it. And here's the challenges we're running into. And I laid out all these questions at his feet. And he looked at me and he said, yep, Jeff, he says, just keep asking those questions. And I was like, what? I mean, come on, I'm coming to you for answers, man. And he said, just keep asking the question. And I didn't understand it at the time, but there's something to that when you're wrestling with something. And it was shortly thereafter that I kind of realized one day, I was like, oh, we've kind of solved it. Like those things I was wrestling with and trying to figure out, by just keeping focused on them, you can get through them and almost resolve them before you realize it. And it was just sort of a moment where that's something that stayed with me, all my life, that I've taken into things where when I'm struggling with something, there's lots of resources available and people we connect with that we can pick each other's brains. And if we keep doing that, keep looking at data, keep researching, keep focused on it, just keep asking the question, you'll get there. So there's a valuable lesson in that. The answers don't always come immediately. Yeah, so I can't say enough. I've had really tremendous opportunities that came out of Rollins College.
That's what's up. Got it. So Alzheimer's is very personal to you. How did going through that personally with your family member shape the way that you think about patients, participants, care, and even how accessible you believe clinical trials should be for families dealing with something so overwhelming?
Yeah, so you're referencing, I've, like a lot of families, it's such a common thing. I've had Alzheimer's in my family. My grandfather was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease when I was young, and this was years before or even decades before I ever thought I'd be involved in clinical trials and working to find a cure for the disease. It just sort of something you experience in life, like many people have. So I watched my grandfather, with his memory loss and cognitive decline as I was growing, and he died with Alzheimer's disease shortly after I finished college. So I had that personal experience that was, there was a connection to it, like in my heart. And so then when I got into the business of conducting clinical trials specifically for Alzheimer's disease, there's just a connection to the patients and to the people and a knowledge of, like, we work with real people. Our job is to collect data. We collect clinical data that we provide back to the study sponsors. And the data is important. There's a lot of work to be done to make sure it's collected well and scientifically valid and all that. And so that's the product we're providing, is these medical insights through data. But the data comes from people. Like, we have real people coming in our doors every day that are living with Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease or liver disease or depression, or, the different areas that we work in. And so for us and in Charter Research, like, there's a real focus on making sure the patient experience is great, because we have a deep and personal understanding these are real people, and clinical trials are meaningful. Clinical trials offer hope. So I guess that's the tie that you're speaking to, Sean, that, like, the making sure we provide an exceptional patient experience is core to who we are.
Wow. And that personal why sets the tone for the work. So let's get into the mission and the machine. Jeff, for listeners who may not be familiar with Charter, give us a quick snapshot. What do you do for your sponsors, and how do your clinics in Orlando, the Villages, and Chicago work together to strengthen the way you run studies?
So Charter Research conducts clinical trials of new potential medications. We test medicines. So we're working to discover the future of medicine across numerous different therapeutic areas. I mentioned some already, like Alzheimer's disease. We also work in depression, bipolar disorder, alcohol use disorder, weight loss, liver disease. So we work in a number of therapeutic areas. We're probably best known for our work in Alzheimer's disease because that's a large majority of our research, but we are multi-therapeutic. And as you mentioned, Roy, we have 3 research clinics here in Orlando, in the Villages, and also in Chicago. And our customers are major pharmaceutical companies and small biotechs and everything in between that invest in new drug development and contract with us to collect detailed medical data regarding their new investigational medications. So that's sort of a synopsis of what we do. Our 3 sites work together to have streamlined processes across them to enable fast startup for our study sponsors and to just recruit more patients. This is the number one thing for clinical trials, is getting enough participants to really move the science and the medicine forward. So having 3 sites helps us do that more effectively.
So how did you decide to which therapeutic areas to focus on? And in your world, what does excellence in data collection really looks like?
The first part, like how do we decide what to focus on, is really where our passion meets the pipeline. And it's what are we passionate about? Me personally, my business partner, our physicians, our staff, like what are we passionate about that we really want to pursue? And where does that align with the pipeline of where there's a good pipeline of work in clinical trials? As I mentioned, we do a lot of work in Alzheimer's disease, and the other therapeutic areas I mentioned are areas where there's a lot of work. There's a lot of research being done. So there's a business opportunity there, and it aligns with things we're passionate about, that we're connected to, that we want to be a small part of helping solve. So deciding on therapeutic areas is really driven by those 2 things. So our data collection, since that's what we're really doing, is providing data, that's the lifeblood of what we do. We have data quality standards and methods and processes that we utilize to ensure that the data we have meets our quality criteria. We have a 6-part criteria it's an industry standard. It's an acronym, LCOSC, that everyone in our industry would be familiar with, which stands for attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, and complete. And they are the criteria of what we must have that defines what good quality data is. And so we look to ours meet those criteria. And so that's sort of like the what of the data, but it's not just what the data is, but the process for how we collect it that's also important. And so we keep track of that. So if you want to nerd out on data, we could talk a lot about that.
Hey, listen, I felt like I was listening to the sound of music, with that.
It rolls right off your tongue, doesn't it?
Right.
That's impressive how you go about the data collection and stuff like that. And one of the things I would say is that there are a lot of myths out there about what it's like to participate in a clinical study. What are the biggest misconceptions you run into, and how do you help clear those up when you're out in the community?
There's a lot of them because a lot of people have heard of clinical research, but they may not have participated in it. And so there's a lot of myths about it. I think one of the big myths is that clinical trials are only for people who have exhausted all other options. And it's really not true at all. There's some trials that focus on advanced illnesses, but lots of trials are for prevention or to improve existing treatments or are for newly diagnosed patients. So clinical trials are really a viable option at any point along a person's health journey. And so that's a big one, is that it's not just an option of last resort. I think another thing that people worry about is the cost of clinical trials, and that it might be expensive or that their insurance won't cover it. And the truth is, study participants don't pay a single penny to be involved in a clinical trial. And we don't take insurance, we don't bill insurance, so that every participant in our trials, we don't even ask for insurance. You come in, and in fact, it works the other way. The study participants are paid for their time. And sometimes people are curious, like, how does that work, Jeff? The study sponsor covers the costs of everything. They're working to collect this medical data. And so we work under contract for them to provide the data, and they pay for all the costs, all the medical tests, everything that the patients receive as part of their participation in the trial is fully covered, including the patients receive a small stipend for each visit to our clinics. So that's another myth that's out there that people worry about. So we spend a lot of time covering these these types of myths and others, just educating the community to share with them about clinical trials, how we do it. And once people learn more, then they're like, oh, it's not so scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that and clearing the air on some of the myths that are out there. And I'm a huge proponent of healthy lifestyles, but I do believe that there's a major need for what you do. I actually had a guy called me a little over a year ago and was telling me about his wife dealing with Alzheimer's. And I actually I just got off the phone with Jeff Pohlig over at Charter. Why don't you call them? And so he's told me about the great experience that they've had as a family using our services. So anyway, yeah, shifting gears a little bit here. I was at a conference yesterday and 100, 200 CEOs at the conference, and there's 16 roundtables, and there's like 2 of them that didn't have AI in their title. They were the empty seats. They were the empty tables. Everybody wanted to be at the AI table.
Everyone's like, AI.
Exactly. It's everywhere now. In clinical research, where is AI actually helping today? Like screening, protocol adherence, and where do you think is still more hype than reality?
So we're definitely in that with everyone else. We're in the early days of AI, and AI is pretty powerful, but I think we've only sort of scratched the surface here of like what we're going to see coming in the next few years. We're using artificial intelligence now as part of our screening process, where we screen medical records. So this is a process that we used to be just a very laborious human process years ago, looking through medical records to try to find potential study participants that would fit the eligibility criteria to participate in a clinical trial. And today we have AI tools that help, scrub through the records, help find patients a little more quickly. So it doesn't get us all the way there. It's a really helpful tool because it kind of filters it down for us. But then there's still the art of the conversation and, a real human connection of connecting to people and talking to them about whether they want to participate. So that part won't ever, I don't ever see that being replaced by AI, but the AI tool definitely helps us with screening medical records. And we've also started using it just this year in digital cognitive exams at the patient's initial assessment. This is a pre-screen where we're sort of learning about each other and making an assessment as to what clinical trial might be the best fit for them. And so we have a cognitive exam that the AI tool can pick up on some subtleties that humans don't. And it's we're still learning it. So I've got my fingers crossed that it's going to be a significant force for us. We'll see. But I hope that it helps us to, sort of enrich our population of patients so that more can move successfully forward. So I'm excited about AI. I'm not a real technically skilled person, but we have a lot of people here that run circles around me and that can put these tools in place. And I really am a big believer in integrating technology into the growth of charter research.
Right. Yes. So behind every strong operation, there's strong culture. Let's talk leadership a little bit.
So, Jeff, you've sat in both the CEO and COO seats, even held COO roles at Bioclinical Research and Compass Research. How did those different roles stretch you as a leader, and what leadership muscles did each one help you build?
The more experience you have, the better. Just time in the seat, trying new things and working with different people on different projects. So the COO roles at Compass and Bioclinica gave me really neat opportunities to work across areas of the business, in finance, budgets and contracts, the clinical trial agreements, business development, patient engagement, pre-screening, the recruitment, community event management, physician partnerships, marketing, clinical operations, compliance. There's so many aspects of what we do. It really takes a big team of people working together to successfully run a good clinical trial. I've enjoyed the opportunity to be in a role where I get to work broadly across different areas. With BioClinica, we had, when I was COO there, we had 30 clinical trial centers across 14 countries. And so I was working that, and there's a lot of inefficiency too that I saw, where, we're working across different regulatory bodies in different time zones with different currencies and different labor laws. And so there becomes a lot of administration that just of necessity from all those differences. And part of my frustration with that sort of led to charter research, where we're focused in the United States in 2 time zones, with one currency, with one regulatory body. Like it's much more focused. And so there's a layer of what is necessary administration in an international research organization that we can just entirely remove that layer with how we're doing that at Charter. And so, you ask about like what leadership muscles are being exercised there. It's just, for me, it's just the more experience, the better, and sort of gaining those insights that inform your decisions on what's the strategy for moving forward at Charter research. Is, you pick up on things that help you. Yeah, there's no right or wrong. It's just different people have a preference for how they want to do it. And so, for me, I was like, let's focus here.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, listen, that's on the organizational side. You've also served on some boards like the Brain Fitness Academy, the Alzheimer's Dementia Resource Center, and also the Alzheimer's Association's board. What did those experiences teach you about building trust, especially with patients, caregivers, and the broader community?
Our business is all about trust. It's trust in from our sponsors for the quality of data we provide, and our reputation for that quality, and for our ability to enroll study participants in their trial. With our study participants, there's a huge amount of trust where they come in and learn from us about how trials work, and ultimately make a decision whether they want to participate and try a new investigational medication that may benefit them or may benefit future generations. So it's all about trust in our business, in our industry, and having the opportunity to join some of those boards and be involved in the community is, I like giving back to the community. I like working with great organizations that always need help from good teams of people and good boards. So I like doing that, and it's a way just to connect with the community. And I think for us, it comes full circle. We have the opportunity to give back and also to connect with more people and establish that trust. That it's like you build relationships, and it might be years down the road that someone's like, "Hey, I'm in a spot now where I want to participate in a study." So it's just sort of a full circle moment, I guess, for building trust.
Impressive. And you mentioned here about the importance of building trust, but in order to build that trust, you have to have the right mechanisms in place, right? And I'm talking about the people skills and the peopleware, so to say. You've mentioned in the past that there are 4 key skills you hire for most often. What are they? And share with us, how do you actually spot those qualities in an interview?
Yeah, so those 4 are critical thinking, communication, teamwork, and the ability to create something that didn't exist before. It's sort of my favorite and big one.
Ooh, yeah.
So the first, critical thinking is really like the ability to reason through problems and sort of look at things in an outline format and say, okay, what are our options here? And to think it through critically and to poke holes in things, ask questions, having a sense of curiosity is all part of that. So critical thinking is really just having a conversation with people and really kind of pushing them in interviews to challenge ideas and see how critically are they thinking about this? How do they react to alternative viewpoints and challenges in thinking? And so sort of the art of just conversation to understand how somebody can think about things. And then if you can think critically, you also have to be able to communicate it verbally or in writing. Have precise, clear, timely, and professional communication is really important. It's great when people have good writing skills and can communicate well in that method. Teamwork is the third thing we really look for. And that's such an important part. As I mentioned, we have big teams of people. that are necessary to run a trial. So it's not about a single individual at all. It's you have to have a sense of team where you put the team is above any single individual, and you have to have that self-sacrifice mentality that like you do whatever is needed for the good of the team. And then finally is like the fourth one is the ability to create something that didn't exist, which is what have you created from scratch that didn't exist that now exists because of you? Having the ability to think big and take bold action toward achieving a vision. I love to hire people like that. It's fun. Everybody loves to have good teammates. So the challenge is it's building that team, and we've been really fortunate. I feel really blessed. We've got a tremendous leadership team here. It's a privilege to work with every day.
That's amazing. And, you know, I would say that, first of all, putting together a team and maintaining culture is very, very, those are two hard tasks. Because as you start to scale, you know, you need to work even harder to maintain those, you know, those principles that you've instilled. But of course, you know, when you talk about growth and looking back now from where you were to where you are today, there's always headwinds, of course, that you've had to overcome. And so, Sean, take us down there a bit in terms of what some of those headwinds may have looked like.
Yeah, Jeff, COVID hit in 2020. Everything basically froze and studies paused, patients flow dropped, revenue majorly hit. You made some calls to cut pay by 33%. You rebuilt the business and then not only restore pay, you gave everyone back what was sacrificed plus 5% more. Walk us through the reason, the plan, the communication, and how you kept the team believing in the mission through all of that.
So it's a big story. I remember the date, March 16th, 2020. We had a major sponsor that called us on March 16th and put their study on hold. It was the first of our sponsors to do that. And at the time, we were just getting the business going. You know, I mean, we had started in some significant work in 2019, and we had made investments. We'd leased a new, larger space. We'd hired a lot of people. We had these new studies, and we going into 2020, we thought it was going to be a banner year for us in January, right? And so then COVID just boom, like out of nowhere. So in March, we had our first study sponsor put their trial on hold. And it was the first study where we had steady patient flow. At the time, it represented 70% of the company's total revenues. And so it was huge. When it stopped, it was like 70% of our revenues gone, like overnight. That's a big we hoped we could pivot. You know, we're like, okay, well, it's okay. We've got other contracts. We can pivot to our other studies. But in the next 9 days, 6 additional sponsors called us and stopped their studies. So we found ourselves like, you know, looking at all that. We had all these contracts and we thought everything was starting the year well. We ended up with only 4 studies open. And we had to call and plead our case and convince those sponsors to, you know, keep the studies open at our sites because they were looking to follow suit. So even just hanging on to those 4 trial opportunities was hard. And then, of course, we had newly issued stay-at-home orders, and you know, it wasn't, of course, just Charter Research. I mean, everyone's going through challenges at that time. But in our business, like our new patient flow dropped to almost zero. In April, we did 1 screen across our entire team working together. We screened 1 patient in April of 2020. So it was a tough time in terms of the business, like just dropping off a cliff when COVID hit. The bank had not yet approved our requested business loans, and it put us in just a tight spot. We'd assembled this really talented team to launch a new site, and we didn't want to lose any of them. And so, you know, as Sean sort of summarized there, we looked at that situation and said, hey, we have a great team. We need this great team to get where we're going and to grow the research business in the way that we wanted to. So we decided we didn't want to lay anybody off, but instead we just reduced the entire team's pay by 33%. At that point in time, like my business partner, Jessica, and I, we're not taking a salary at all, but but we were paying our team, and our philosophy was like, it's better for everyone to sacrifice a portion of their pay than for anyone to lose their job entirely. And so the mentality is just like, hey, we're going to suffer as a team and we're going to rebuild as a team. And that was the message. You asked about the message and, leading that conversation. You just going into the conversation and being open and saying, hey, I've got bad news. Like, let's just start with like, none of what I'm about to say is good. And we have had these significant losses in business. We've had these studies put on hold. We've got lots of challenges with recruitment right now because of the environment we're in. And here's where we're at financially. And so this is what we're going to do. And I think just having an opportunity, we sat around the table with our team and had the conversation, and it's not fun, but I think the team appreciates just having an open conversation about it. So that's the way we did it. And we had a plan too. It wasn't just like, here's the tough times. We said, we believe with an intense focus on these 4 remaining studies that we can come out of this. And we said, here's a 4-month plan for how we're going to do it. And so we had a plan for like the go forward. And the team, we had a wonderful team. They dug in, they worked hard. We executed on that plan. And just a couple months later, we boosted pay up a little bit to like only a 20% decrease. And then we returned everyone to normal salaries by the end of June, 1 month faster than we had projected. So, I mean, we worked, it's super stressful at the time. I guess it makes a fun story to tell on a podcast now, but at the time, you don't know what's going to happen exactly, right? So, it took us, but 7 months later, I would say like we'd fully recovered. Our studies were reopened. Our patient flow was back. We had new contracts coming in. The bank approved our financing. Like we had like worked together through the darkness and come back into like everything being somewhat back to normal. And so that was then in October of that year that we, the team had sacrificed and worked extraordinarily hard, and we pulled out of that bad spot because of how everybody pitched in and worked. And it put us, the hard work of the team put us in a position where we had the cash. And so it was like, hey, everything that you sacrificed, like here's that money back. And we felt like it was just the right thing to do. That when you have sort of the team, making a sacrifice like that they should get a little extra. And so that's why we said it's just the right thing to do, to give them 5% on top, which I think people appreciated, but having had the chance, no one would want to go through that,
Yeah.
So that was tough, but we came out of that. I mean, since then, our team now is like 15 times bigger. We've built 2 beautiful research facilities in Orlando and the Villages. We've contributed data to 3 FDA-approved medications. In that year, in 2020, we finished about 670 patient visits that year, and so a little under 700. This year, we'll do well over 7,000. So it's, sometimes you got to go through the darkness to you just got to keep going. So that's the story of what we did during COVID. And it probably matches a lot of, there's so many people in the community that worked hard and supported each other through a really tough time. So our story is just one of the thousands out there, but that's how we did it.
You kind of led me here into the next question perfectly, Jeff. And when you said you stuck together through the darkness and you came out at the other end, a much stronger team, a much stronger organization that was poised for success. But to even have gone through that and to have had your team members actually agree to what you proposed and stuck with it is actually, I would say an underlying or underscore of your leadership. And their belief in what you were doing. So kudos for that. And speaking about leadership, how did that entire experience change you as a leader? And what has shifted in the way you scenario plan, prepare for uncertainty, or build resiliency into the business now?
Anytime you go through something difficult, it gives you more confidence to manage through the next unexpected difficulty. So I think it's given me some, just some confidence. I don't think these are new learnings per se. The things I'm going to share with you in answer to your question are not like new aha moments that came out of COVID. They're kind of basic principles that I knew that everyone knows, but it gets ingrained in you more when you go through something like that. So one obviously is, in business, don't rely too heavily on a single revenue stream. You've got to diversify. Now, that really wasn't a mistake that we made. At that point in time, the company was young. We were just getting off the ground. And so you take the contracts you can get, you get a big one, you're not going to turn it down. Our customer concentration, as I said, was like 70% in one study. So that was not really a mistake we made. It was more just a result of the timing of all this. But you still learn that lesson, right? Because that is a precarious place to be. And when you're starting a company, you've got to go through that growth stage of like, you're going to have times where you're really concentrated, and that's how you grow. But you learn the lesson, and it gets ingrained into you through things like this, where you want to be sure that you're well diversified and have a, as we talk about in our industry, a strong study portfolio of variety of studies to manage that. And the other thing is just strengthening the organization financially. Again, we were in a spot early in our growth, so we weren't really there yet. But today we, are able to maintain a much stronger balance sheet so that we can weather through tough times. And so it's taken us, like any organization, takes some time to build that. And we've used debt to help scale our business, but we've kept that really manageable in proportion to the size of the business. Last year, we paid off all of our debt. Today, we're 100% debt-free as an organization, and we're able to keep sufficient cash on hand to weather us through tough times. And so I wouldn't say I learned about that it wasn't a new process, but it's something you take away from it when you go through it. You're like, gosh, it'd be great if we could have been in the position we're in today. Right. It'd be easier if COVID hit again, we'd be in a better spot to weather it than we were then.
We got the memory muscle now.
Sounds like a much better spot. COVID was just, that's a once in a lifetime kind of event.
We hope so, right?
Right. Yes, I don't think. But anyway, I don't want to digress. One belief that you held before 2020 that you don't hold anymore, and what's one belief that only got stronger because of what you went through in 2020?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a belief I held that I don't anymore, but a belief I hold stronger is belief in team and in culture. It's a critical part of a strong organization. You can have a good strategy, that's important too, but you've got to have a good team and the right culture to be successful. Like in that example, the only reason we got through that is because we had a strong team of people that believed in the mission, believed in supporting each other, wanted to work through a tough time together. And that makes all the difference. So, there's the saying in business that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think it's really the strongest thing is having a strong culture and a strong strategy that you're executing well. So I think that's a belief for me that strengthened through that time.
Awesome. So, Jeff, the challenges you navigated really highlight how complex your world is. And, you're running multi-site trials across different states, different cities, so to say. Resilience isn't just operational anymore. It's digital too, and especially in this world. So let's touch on that for a moment. Since I run a cybersecurity company, I'm always saying that every modern organization is basically a data steward. But in clinical research, that's amplified. You're protecting people's health stories across your Orlando villages and Chicago sites. How do you build data protection into, the everyday rhythm of the organization?
As I said earlier, data is our lifeblood. I mean, it's our product that we provide to our study sponsors. So we work with several systems that we utilize to secure that data and ensure it's secure transmittal to the study sponsors, our clients. We work with the electronic source system, source meaning the system where we collect all the raw data. It's an electronic system called Creo, one of 3 sort of big systems players in our industry. We also enter that data into electronic data capture systems or EDC systems. And these are generally selected from third-party providers that are selected by our study sponsors. So we have some technology systems in place that we use to capture and secure and transmit the data. And then we just have practices here. Our data, like at Charter Research, the data is never shared or sold. The data never goes anywhere except to the study sponsor. And all the patient data is de-identified. So of course, if you were to come in and participate in a clinical trial at Charter Research, our staff would know you as Roy and as Sean, but your data would go out to our partners on the trial, our study sponsors, as patient number 235, and here's the clinical data on this patient, but it's all de-identified. There's no name or identifying information in there. So there's data practices we have and data management technologies that we utilize. Protecting the data is key to our business.
Don't use 235 for me. That's my suite number here for my office.
I have a camera outside your door, Roy. Just to be clear, that's a made-up example.
Hey, I'm going to hit you up after this for the lotto numbers, man.
Right. Listen, I love it. Yeah, no, it's been like that with Jeff and I. But listen, on a practical level, and I love, teams. That's, I've been that way for a long time. It started with the military and it's gone through my career here. What actually moves the needle for your teams? Is it the training, the systems you use, or just everyday habits that keep everyone sharp?
Well, there's so many aspects to that question, depending on that. So if we're sticking on that sort of the data path, there's a lot of systems that keeps everybody sharp. They become, as you're saying, Sean, like everyday habits. So as we think about data, there's data quality standards. I mentioned some before. We have quality standards that we follow. We have processes. I mean, it gets very particular, right? So even like if there's a change in data or there's a data error made, we have a process for how that should be handled, and that the mistaken data would be lined through with a single line, but not obscure the entry. The correction's written right there. It's dated. It's initialed. There's a process for every aspect of how we collect data, how we record data, whether it's handwritten, as in this example, or whether it's entered electronically. There's methods too, not just for the data itself, but how you collect it, the process of how we consent people for participation in clinical trials. So the team is absorbed in all these processes. There's ongoing training, and it becomes habit day to day. So that's how we do it.
And what you're describing is a parallel to what we focus on here at Aurora Infotech, and cybersecurity, when we help organizations innovate and move fast without ever putting trust that that they've earned, right? And so repeating processes, making sure that it becomes muscle memory, but not only focusing on the technology, but also the training aspects of it and the human aspects. But I digress.
Let's do some rapid fire here, Jeff. One book you gift most and why?
Built to Last by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras. Old book. Man, it's been out a while now, but it's probably one of my favorite business books because it talks about building enduring great companies and their guiding philosophies, their core values, setting big goals. So I like that. I've always found that inspirational, and I like sharing that with others. So Built to Last, I would say that's one I gift the most. Most recently, we provided our team with the Measure What Matters by John Doerr, which is about goal setting, objectives and key results. So,
favorite place to think big? Is it the lake, your office, at home, or on a flight?
At the lake or anywhere outdoors that's big and open. I like to be up high and like on a mountain, on the lake. Like I feel like it's easier to think big thoughts when you're in a big arena. I don't like the walls. I don't like to be enclosed in a flight in an airliner. I like to be like somewhere that's spacious.
What's the most overrated buzzword in healthcare right now? And not AI.
No, AI is overused everywhere. In healthcare,
yes.
Patient centricity. I think if you have to tell people that you're patient centric, then that's a sign that you definitely are not.
Got it.
So, it's like it's used as a default marketing term, and like it's without any substantive changes to the patient experience. And so like, come on, be real about it. And it's not, patient centricity is overused.
And what's the habit that makes tomorrow easy today?
Planning and execution.
And finally, this is a cool one, I think. On water ski, is it slalom, trick, or jump?
Jump.
Okay.
I like them all, but jump's my favorite.
Right. Well,
yeah. So Jeff, you talk about work life not as balance but alignment. Tell us, what does alignment actually look like when you're running a heavy ops multi-site research business?
Well, being an entrepreneur is a nonstop 24/7 effort. So there's a certain blending of work and life. Like it's not like you go home and the business just shuts off. Like it's always on. And so if you're an entrepreneur leading that, like that's the life you've committed to. And that's why I don't see it as a balance between them when people talk about work-life balance. I don't like the idea of a balance because it implies that you're trading one off for the other. And so I think of it more as alignment, like everything working together in unison, each part supporting the other. It might sound counterintuitive, but you can't really succeed in one area until you succeed, at least to a certain level, in everything. So for example, if you don't get enough sleep, you're not going to be effective at work. And if you're not effective at work, you're not taking care of your family. And everything sort of intertwines. So I see it that way, and I just try to think of it as being aligned. It's just the idea of work-life balance just doesn't resonate with me. So I think the biggest aspect of being aligned is really being engaged and present in what you're doing at the moment. So that's the way I think about it and like to approach it, because there's not a lot of work-life balance as an entrepreneur, but you can achieve some alignment though.
Cool. Now tell us about a meaningful connection. You mentioned the great Harvey Massey earlier, but maybe a mentor, maybe your spouse, a business partner. I was at the opening of your complex there, and you talked about your business partner. But who really shifted the way you make decisions? What changed for you because of that relationship?
There's a lot. I think there's so many people along the way that serve as mentors or that give examples, little lessons here and there, new insights, new ways of successful communication or leadership. So, I try to take examples of small lessons I observe and that I can use to change how I manage things that I either want to emulate or things that I want to avoid. My wife is, we met at Rollins College, and she's always been someone who's really courageous with questions and with she doesn't shy away from confrontation. So I remember when we were students together at Rollins, we were in a mathematics class together, and the professor was explaining some new concept, and she raises her hand. So everyone turns to look at her, and he calls on her, and she just says, "I don't get it." And it's like there wasn't a question there, and there was kind of a chuckle in the room, but I was like, it takes guts to ask a question and to move your knowledge forward and just acknowledging I don't get it.
Right.
Everyone else, no one else in the room was understanding what was going on either, but they didn't, no one else would say it. And she just hey, you got to go over that again, because nobody here gets that. So I think part of that is having, the leadership lesson is having the courage to not really care what others think about you and to have conviction in what you believe in. And honestly, a lot of other people are going to thank you for it later. People are coming up to her after class being like, "Thanks for saying that, because I had no idea what was going on in there." So I like people that are courageous, and maybe that's part of how my wife and I connected. Is she's really courageous about that. I can share with you one other story that's completely different. I remember in my previous business, I learned a lesson about keeping sales simple. So my former business was automotive collision repair. And I was working in a sales role. We were making sales presentations to our customers, and the sales manager and I were meeting with a general manager at his place of business to close a sale. And I had done all the work with this customer up to that point, talking to him about the equipment. He was going to buy a big bunch of equipment from us. And so I knew we were close to getting a signed purchase order for what would eventually become the largest sale in our company's history. And so the sales manager and I had a conversation with the customer. We're in his office talking, right? And we're at his desk. He's behind his desk, and the sales manager and I are on the other side, and we're talking. He has the printed purchase order in front of him on his desk, and he's ready to sign it. He has the pen like in his hand, and is like, he's leaning forward. He's got the pen like a quarter inch from the paper. He's just about ready to sign on the line, and he stops, and he just hesitates, and he looks up, and the pen kind of pulls away from the paper, and he says, "Hey, what about the training?" And I went, oh my goodness. Like in my head, I'm instantly thinking about the product training. And I had gone through all sorts of things with him about the product and ensuring he knew and understood our product and how it compared and was better to our competitors, every imaginable topic on that. But I'd completely forgotten to tell him about the training. So in my head, I'm thinking, oh no, like, because our training, there was a lot of training that comes with this product. Very detailed training that lasts several days, covers the product use in detail. It's hands-on training in the shop with a full-time team member with years of experience. There's a big part. And I'm like, how did I forget to tell him all this? Like, we're never going to close this sale without this. I need to unpack this. I've got to make a big presentation right now. And so I thought about all these details, and I'm thinking, like, where do I start? And before I could get a word out, the sales manager goes, he just waves his hand. Oh, all that's included. And the general manager said, oh, okay. And he signed the purchase order. And just like that. And so here I was, like, thinking about how to make a giant presentation. And the man I was with, who had a lot more sales experience than I did, he answered it in 3 words. He said, all that's included. And I thought about that later. I was like, man, if I were to sum up this giant presentation that I'm envisioning in my head that I never gave, that would have been a perfect summary of it. All that's included, because it was. And so, in many cases, the fewer words, the better. And so he answered in 3 words. The customer accepted it, and we walked out with the largest sale we'd ever made.
Got it. Look, you had started it with I, then on the back end, you're like, we made.
Well, I have to, it was definitely we, because I might have messed that up, Sean, if Eric weren't there to save me.
But it's amazing on times how we can, how our mind will just take us down that path where overthinking things, we go on this big thoughtful journey when, the solution to the problem is literally 3 words, right? That would solve it and close.
Right. Yeah.
So interesting. Let's go big for a moment. And I asked this question to every one of our guests, and, Sean and I, this is an exciting moment for us because we're building competitive boards here. So if you were building your dream board of advisors, anyone from any era, who makes that list for you, and what would each of them add to your journey?
I've heard you ask this question to previous guests, and it's a hard question. It's a great question. So I've had opportunity to think about this. So there's 4 people that I admire that I think would be excellent on a board of advisors. So are the 2 of you competing for the best board here? Is that what I heard, Roy?
Well, I won a long time ago, so let's just be real.
So I would put Jim Collins would be one, the author of Built to Last that I mentioned earlier. I like his focus on research-based, timeless principles of organizational greatness. And so I think his guidance would be really valuable, and love to work alongside him. Number 2 for me would be Warren Buffett. He's really focused on, I like he's obviously such an incredible investor, but has a focus on high quality operations, like over the long term, and on keeping an even temperament, even during times of adversity. And I think he'd just be a really sound advisor through pretty much any business situation. And my last 2, Truett Cathy, founder of Chick-fil-A, it would be, I like the customer service training that he's led, and focus on people and consistency and just excellence in operations. So I put Truett on the board, and my 4th one is Philip Crosby, the author of Quality is Free. Yeah?
Yes. Like, who is this?
He's actually local here, Sean. So Philip Crosby, he lived in Winter Park. You might know the Crosby YMCA. It was torn down a few years back, but there was a Crosby Y named after him. So he wrote a book called Quality is Free. And he was one of the leaders of sort of the quality revolution years ago, like, when the Japanese were really beating the United States in terms of quality in automotive. And he was a leader in that, in quality management, and popularized a performance standard of 0 defects and an emphasis on doing it right the first time. And I've always liked, his work and his thinking on that, because I like high quality stuff. And so I like a quality champion like Philip Crosby.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I would say that's a powerful board, very powerful. And I would say, what do you say, Sean? That would rank up there and probably top 3, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Top 3? Are you guys the top 2?
And listen, at least he didn't give us.
I gotta find out who's on your board that beats mine.
At least he didn't give us Steve Jobs.
Steve's been on many boards. I mean, like this, at least 20 out of the 26 boards already. So
right, you got very creative.
Really,
you got some good ones.
Really.
Too.
So I haven't. So wow, Steve Jobs is on 20 out of 26. You're keeping track. You're going to have stats on who people want on their board. Yeah.
It's all about the data.
Yep.
Awesome. Hey, Jeff, that's powerful stuff. And, those kinds of relationships and the way they shape who we become as leaders, they're the things that, you can't always capture in a bio. And it actually sets up the perfect place to go next, because one of the things our listeners love about this show is hearing the practical wisdom that comes out of journeys like yours. So let's shift into that. Let's talk about the lessons you've learned, the advice you pass on, and the things you wish someone had told you earlier. Sean?
What are the 3 most valuable pieces of advice you'd pass on to other leaders? And even more importantly, what's the story or moment behind each that made it stick for you?
The first one I'd say is start now. Anything you think you can do or believe you can, start it. There's no shortcuts to any place worth going. You're never going to regret having started right away, but you might regret having waited. Mark Twain says the secret to getting ahead is getting started. And I love that quote. And so for me, it's start now, 2 words, go, let's go. And I like it too, because it's action oriented, it's there's a bias for action in those words, and that appeals to me. So I think it's great advice. You can learn a lot from doing market research, but the best market research is a purchase order. Can you go sell something? You don't need a lot of market research if you have orders in your hand. So start now. That's my first one. I guess a second would be, don't be afraid to fail. Or I would rephrase it this way: do it like you don't care if you're going to fail. I learned that actually from a coach that everything comes back to water skiing at some point. So I was water skiing and a coach, I was working on a water ski, trick ski pass. In water skiing and competitive trick skiing, you have 2 passes, each 20 seconds long, to do as many tricks as you can. So you want to land each trick and go very quickly into the next one, so you can get as many as you can in time. And so I was working on my runs for competition. I was doing them, standing up the runs, getting through all the tricks. And he said, okay, Jeff, that looks good, but it just looks cautious. He was trying to get me to go faster. He says, just do them again like you don't care if you're going to fall. And that kind of clicked with me. It was just about having the confidence in what you're doing. And even above confidence, just a conviction, to take appropriate and bold risks and, be comfortable with the potential for failure, and just be I don't care. I'm aware of the risks, and I know I can do this, and I'm going. And so his words have always stuck with me. And of course, they applied in that moment to water skiing, but I've used it in business too, is to do it like you don't care if you're going to fail. Of course you do care, but there's a spirit in there that's don't be afraid of it. Let's go. Another action-oriented one, I guess.
Take away the guardrails.
That's right. I I just got to chime in and say, hey, you like the way we use stick? How you made it stick? You know, isn't that like when you're doing your water ski jumps, you're sticking it?
Yeah. So you don't have to stick it in jumping. Like as long as you land and ski away, it counts. Even if you crash all over the place and lose a ski, if you can hang onto the handle and ski away on one ski, they give it to you. So no style points. It's just pure distance.
I was going to say, either way you're landing. So
You're landing.
Well, hopefully you land on your skis and take that bone jolt on your skis and, not on your head.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hey, so Jeff, for younger operators who are out there who, are listening to your story and inspired by the journey that you've had, what's the one skill you think they should focus on building this year? And what's a real project or situation where they can actually practice it?
I think, it depends on the person and the situation that they're facing. I think the advice that can be applied broadly to young people in their careers is to dive into whatever you're doing, whatever the opportunity is in front of you, dive into it in a deep way. There's opportunity to learn. Like you want to, whatever the opportunity is, like really go after it, give it 100%, dive into it, learn it really well. If you're working toward a successful outcome, even if you fail to achieve it, you will learn a lot. And hopefully you succeed. If you fail, you're going to learn and you can apply those learnings to your next attempt. And so, success is often sort of a series of failures to get to success. So I would just encourage, if I was speaking to a younger version of myself, is like, hey, just dig in and like do everything you can and every opportunity you can, like go after it and apply yourself 100% because it's more fun and you learn more when you're going hard.
Well, Jeff, let's peek around the corner a bit, Roy.
Yeah. So looking ahead, what does success look like 10 years from now, both for Charter Research and for you personally?
For Charter Research, we're focused on growth. I guess you can maybe from some of the advice that appeals to me that I'm sharing with others, like I like doing things big and I like growth. It's important to us to make a big difference. Our mission is to advance medicine for healthier lives. And so the more people we can touch, the more patients that can be involved in clinical trials helps us move science and move medicine forward. And so we're focused on ways to do that are meaningful and significant on a large scale that can really contribute. We're a small player in a large industry. And if we can become a bigger player and make a bigger contribution, that appeals to me. And so Charter Research 10 years from now, we're making investments now in technology and in tools that can help improve our teams. We're focused on improving and strengthening our systems, especially around patient engagement. So as we work on that, it's going to create opportunities, for the company to continue to grow. We'll open more locations. We've talked to our team about 10 years from now, today we have 3 sites. Our goal is to have 10 sites in 10 years. And so we're going to continue to expand with more locations. And that gives us the opportunity to work together as a team. Streamlined operations for new trial startup, but also the ability to reach broadly to lots of patient populations and bring that into a reality. So our focus is on growth, adding locations, adding technology, just continuing to get better at what we do, always with a focus on advancing medicine for healthier lives. For me personally, that's just more fun trying to work to build and help organize and lead people to do that. So that's what, I'm focused more. I mean, for me, like the company and me is sort of the same goal. Like I'm excited about working toward that vision. And so I guess that's my personal goal as well.
Awesome. And speaking of technology, when you look at where AI and modern trial designs are headed, where do you think they're going to make the biggest, most meaningful difference in the patient experience?
I mean, the patient experience probably in the diagnosis. I mean, if I step back some, like our work is on the forefront of science. And so broadly as an industry, the use of advanced computing and artificial intelligence can speed up the development timeline of new medicines. And so I think there's potential that artificial intelligence is probably going to alter clinical trials, I hope, by helping bring new products to market faster. And I'm definitely not an AI expert, but it's clear we're in the early stages of the technology. When I use AI, I often feel like I have a well-educated, like 20-year-old assistant that's writing me a summary of the data, and but the data summary is being written under time pressure without thorough research. So it's going to be well written, but it might be wrong. And so that's sort of like how I feel AI is, but I expect that to change as the technology develops, and it's probably going to change shockingly fast, like as we look at how things are going. So when you think about what jobs will change with AI, it's clear that certain jobs, primarily knowledge work, will be the first to change and change most dramatically. I mean, physical labor is harder to automate. AI isn't going to reshingle a roof, but it can write a paper to summarize clinical trial results. So in my industry, I mean, artificial intelligence isn't going to replace our clinical work. I mean, it's human. It's humans serving humans. But artificial intelligence could be used to more quickly aggregate and summarize clinical trial results from across sites globally to spot trends, identify anomalies, maybe recommend next iterations on medications. So there's certainly areas that we're going to be seeing a change. So I guess getting back to what you asked about the patients, probably the AI is going to assist with getting an accurate diagnosis more quickly. And in terms of clinical trials, matching people to the right trial more quickly. So I think from a patient perspective, that's where they'll see it. I hope they'll see it because that has a real human benefit.
Got it. Final question. You said before, if you could go back and change one thing, you'd simply start sooner. What do you think that would have unlocked for you or for Charter if you had started sooner?
Time gives you the opportunity to build and grow. And so if you start sooner, you give yourself more time to compound your efforts. Everything that we're doing today at Charter Research is built on what we did last year and the year before that and the year before that. And we're in the next phase of the growth of our business. If we had started sooner, could we have gotten to where we are today a year ago or 2 years ago? And so I think it allows you to, I think of it in terms of compounding. And, if you're building a building and you're laying bricks, like you get more bricks in there. It's a stronger foundation. Great things happen over time. So starting soon is always good.
Well, Jeff, man, fantastic time. Getting to talk to you in this kind of setting versus at a networking event or over coffee or lunch really lets me see the depth of your mission and what you've driven at Charter, the compassion you bring to clinical research, the clarity in how you lead, and the way you honor the families behind the data that you've accumulated and that you share with your sponsors. It all showed up today in such a powerful way, man. I've known you for a while, and I've always respected how steady, thoughtful, and people-oriented or people-centered that you are. We talked about this when I heard you speak at ACG last year, and I was like, I got to get you in front of these CEOs. But hearing the full arc of the journey just took that respect to another level for me. And I've learned a few things I probably should have already known. So thank you for sharing your heart and the real why behind what you all do at Charter Research.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sean. That's kind words. I appreciate it. It's fun connecting with you guys.
Yeah, Jeff, what an incredible conversation. Today, we really got to explore the human side of clinical research, the compassion, the rigor, the mission, all through the lens of a leader who's turning science into hope for families. We talked about purpose, resilience, operational courage, and what it means to steward not just data, but real people's health stories. And Jeff, hearing how your personal connection to Alzheimer's shaped your path, that really hits home. Your journey from operational leadership to co-owning a multi-site research organization and your commitment to educating the community reminds us that innovation just doesn't happen. in labs. It happens in relationships and trust and in everyday decisions your team make, even the ones made before coffee kicks in. I forgot to mention that we even took a little bit of a side step today, and we journeyed through the sound of music. So, thank you for your transparency, your leadership, and the heart you bring to this work. To learn more about the studies underway, how to participate, or how Charter is advancing the future of medicine, visit charterresearch.com or connect with Jeff on LinkedIn. And we'll have both links in the show notes below. And for our listeners, if you've ever had a loved one touched by Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or any condition where clinical trials offer a path forward, remember, progress happens because leaders like Jeff and organizations like Charter give people the chance to be part of that future. Jeff, thanks again for being with us today.
And to our audience, thank you for tuning in to the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. And until next time, stay curious, stay driven, and keep leading with purpose.
Hi, I'm Roy Richardson, host of the Dynamic Business Leaders Podcast. Are you a business owner or a leader of a successful business? If yes, we'd love to have you as a guest on our program. Our goal is simple. We provide a platform for leaders to share their experiences to benefit others. We want to hear your story, how you got started, the challenges you faced along the way, and your passion today. If this sounds like you or you know someone who fits these criteria, then be sure to get in touch with us by visiting our website linked in the episode description below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the notification bell to be notified when our next episode goes live. Or, if you'd rather listen to us during your car rides, you can also follow us on your favorite audio channel using your podcatcher. Thanks again, and remember, keep crushing it.